Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
Source in front of us for this deep dive. It's a singular account, a very, very personal story.
The first-person narrative, yeah.
Exactly. It's the story of Layla Hassan. It chronicles her life in Aleppo, Syria, her conversion, and then her eventual flight to Athens.
And our mission here is, I think, very focused. We're going to use this narrative to really extract the core knowledge about that journey from living under this rigid, fear-based authority.
The kind that just defines everything.
It defines your whole identity.
Yeah.
And we're tracking the journey from that to achieving a very profound but also very costly freedom. This is a survival story.
It is a story of survival against family, cultural, and, immense political pressure. And the setup, the initial hook is just so critical. Layla was, on the surface, the perfect daughter. Quiet, obedient daughter of a highly respected imam in Aleppo.
Right, but that public facade is key. Behind closed doors, the source is clear. Fear was the air she breathed.
So let's start there with that imprisonment of obedience in Aleppo.
It's that duality you mentioned. The father's public self was the calm, compassionate imam, the guide. But at home, she describes him as a storm about to explode.
And that contrast isn't just a personality quirk, right? It's tied to something bigger.
It's entirely cultural. It's about the crushing pressure of maintaining honor. So public reverence has to be backed by total and often terrifying private control.
Which raises the question, what kind of survival strategies do you learn in a house like that? She talks about a total culture of duty.
Absolutely. Praying 5 times a day, the hijab worn perfectly, never, ever asking questions.
And her mother's strategy was essentially to disappear.
Yeah, she taught Layla to walk without a sound. I mean, what a phrase. The goal is just to not be noticed, to become invisible to avoid the storm.
And love or affection, it was completely transactional.
Oh, 100%. She learned very early that affection was something you earned. It wasn't given freely. She earned it by reciting the Quran perfectly.
And this started when she was just 7.
7 years old in this small, smoke-filled office. And the punishment for getting it wrong, it wasn't always physical at first.
No, she says the look of disappointment was actually more destructive than a slap.
It's a more effective form of control, isn't it? The physical taps only came when that look wasn't enough to enforce perfection.
And the result of all this, of doing everything perfectly, it's this profound internal emptiness.
Exactly. She felt no faith, only duty. She wasn't building a relationship with God. She was just trying to avoid punishment from her father. That emptiness is the critical starting point for everything that follows.
Okay, so that's the home. The first cracks in these walls, though, they start to appear when she wants to go to university.
Which was an audacious dream. She wanted to study pedagogy, to be a teacher.
And for a daughter of an imam in that culture, just asking was a huge risk.
A massive risk. Her father, he only agreed reluctantly and with. I mean, the restrictions were intense.
Her brother Rashid was basically her guard.
He had to drive her, wait for her, no talking to boys. She could only study education at one specific university. But she took the deal immediately.
Because even that tiny sliver of freedom was worth it.
It was everything. And the campus itself was a complete shock to her system.
She describes seeing people who were free, curious, spontaneous, asking questions without this constant weight of fear.
And she found her own little secret rebellion, 30 extra minutes in the library.
Right, reading poetry and novels while her brother was fuming outside.
That was the intellectual seed, for sure. But the real catalyst, the thing that made it all feel urgent, was a violent event with a classmate, Fatma.
What happened there?
Fatma was seen talking to a boy from another course, and for that she was severely beaten and forced into a marriage with an older cousin.
And for Layla, that was the moment her own cage became visible.
Exactly. She saw that the system wasn't about devotion. It was control and violence disguised as devotion. When she saw the bars on Fatma's cage, she couldn't unsee the ones on her own.
That recognition, as you say, it creates a hunger for something else. Which brings us to the Syrian war.
Right. The war intensifies, the university becomes a refugee center, and Layla starts volunteering. And for the first time, she feels like she's doing something that truly mattered.
She finds purpose in all that pain. And in that chaos, she meets Hannah.
Another volunteer, yeah. And Hannah had this calm about her that Layla just couldn't understand.
There's that incredible little story about the crying child.
Hannah didn't try to shush the child or silence the noise. She just knelt down and started drawing with her. She just stayed. That presence, that peace in the middle of chaos was what Layla craved.
So she finally asks her about it.
She does. And Hannah says she's just giving back the peace she found. And that conversation leads to the turning point. One night, Hannah quietly puts a small, worn Arabic New Testament in Layla's bag.
With just a warning, be careful.
And so begins the secret reading. Late at night, phone light on the lowest setting, starting with the Gospel of Matthew.
What struck her first was just how simple it was. It felt like a conversation, not a list of rules.
And this is where we shift from the cultural analysis to the theological one, because the contrast she found was immediate and profound.
What was the core of that contrast?
It was the God she knew required constant obedience, total vigilance, endless effort. There was no rest. It was all performance.
But the New Testament offered something completely different. Jesus says the weary and burdened can come to him and find rest.
That word rest, for someone whose entire life was defined by the anxiety of effort, that was everything. The idea of an easy burden meant that acceptance wasn't based on her perfect performance.
And the parables reinforce that. The prodigal son. The father runs to his son.
Yes, he doesn't wait for a perfect apology. He runs. It's the complete opposite of the harsh judge she was raised to fear.
And the story of the woman caught in adultery. A God who chooses forgiveness over condemnation.
It completely reframed her idea of God. From this distant, angry judge to a loving, accepting father who came for broken people, not perfect ones.
So her whole survival strategy had to change.
It flipped entirely. From external obedience to internal surrender. And after months of this, she whispers this raw, honest prayer. There's no voice from heaven, no miracle, just a quiet, profound certainty that settles in her soul.
A certainty that came with an immediate, terrifying cost. Which brings us to the betrayal. 3 months in, her younger brother, Omar, finds the Bible app open on her phone.
And he runs straight to their father.
So she's confronted by her father and her uncle, Rashid, the family enforcer.
And she makes the choice not to lie. They ask her directly, have you accepted Christianity? And her answer is just one word. Try. Which is an amazing choice of word. It's not a simple yes. It's, I'm trying to live this new way.
And the response is instant. Physical slap, and then the emotional blow.
You're no longer my daughter. And her father, to preserve his own reputation, his public honor, he orders her locked in a windowless storage room for 3 months.
The goal being to force her to recant.
The conditions were just. They were designed to break a person. Constant white light, the smell of mold, barely enough food. But the analytical point here isn't just the horror of it. It's the paradox of what happened to her spirit.
Right. Her body gets weaker, she's counting her ribs, her hair is falling out, she has infections, but her spirit gets stronger.
She says she learned that God's presence was revealed in stillness. And this is the radical reframing, that suffering for Christ is not a disgrace, it's a privilege. She went from seeing pain as failure to seeing it as intimacy.
And the ultimate proof of that shift is that moment with her violent uncle.
Yes. During a particularly bad beating, she feels compassion for him. She sees him as another prisoner, trapped by fear and tradition. And she tells him, I forgive you. Jesus loves you. There's still time for you to be free too.
Which must have completely shattered his control over her.
It did, because he was now confronting someone who wasn't afraid of him anymore.
But her refusal to break leads to the final threat. They decide to send her to a radical religious rehabilitation center.
A place she knows is basically a death sentence.
And that threat spurs this miraculous escape.
The most unlikely rescuer you could imagine. Her cousin Amina, the daughter of the very uncle who was beating her.
Amina overhears the plan.
She does. And she steals the key from her father's pocket while he's asleep and gets Layla out to a waiting car in the middle of the night.
The exchange between them is just... It's incredible. Amina reveals she has also been secretly reading the Bible.
Inspired by Layla's courage. Amina couldn't leave, but she tells her cousin, live free Isla for me too.
So she makes it across the border to a shelter in Gaziantep, Turkey, and she talks about the significance of that first hot shower after 3 months.
Yeah, watching the dirt and the blood just drain away. It was a physical symbol of washing away the imprisonment and the pain. A physical rebirth.
Her recovery physically and emotionally is slow, but it leads to this public declaration, her baptism.
In a small plastic pool. But for her, it symbolized burying that old, fearful self, the one who lived for duty and being reborn into freedom. Her identity was sealed.
And this all leads us to her present life. Her ministry in Athens.
Right. She now works at a refugee ministry, helping other women who have lost everything, women from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Her ministry sounds so simple. She just listens, helps practically, and only shares her own story when she sees that hunger in their eyes.
She understands that her pain wasn't wasted, it was repurposed. And the proof of that, the legacy, came recently through a secure channel.
News about her cousin, Amina.
Amina, the one who freed her, has also been secretly baptized in Syria.
Wow.
So Layla's suffering planted a seed that gave Amina the courage to find the same freedom. The suffering, as terrible as it was, it became sacred because it produced fruit.
The final balance she draws is really the definitive takeaway for us. What she lost, a conditional family, a religion of rules, it just doesn't compare to what she gained.
An unconditional father, relationship of grace, and a life of real purpose. She traded material stability for spiritual certainty.
So this whole narrative, it gives us this deep chronological look at the steep price of, well, of intellectual and spiritual autonomy.
It really does. It shows that the pursuit of truth can lead to a complete loss of everything you have materially, but a total gain spiritually.
And if we think about the bigger picture, her journey went from simply doing her duty to avoid punishment to actively choosing to sacrifice for what she believed.
It connects right back to that idea she read from the Apostle Paul. He said he wanted to know Christ and participation in his sufferings. For Layla, that suffering was the key to an intimacy with her truth that she says she would never trade for any comfort.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Layla discovered the deepest intimacy with her truth in that windowless storage room, when everything, her family, her comfort, her reputation, was stripped away.
Which leads to the provocative thought for all of us. If true freedom and faith are, as she says, perfected in weakness, what blind spots does our reliance on comfort and safety create in our own lives? What's it preventing us from knowing more deeply about ourselves or about truth?
Layla's final reflection really says it all. True freedom is not the absence of problems, but liberation from fear, emptiness, and the need to prove one's own worth.